Hi there again. It's your little brother from Johannesburg, South Africa, reflecting on the recent US President Barack Obama's Nelson Mandela's annual lecture. Lack of compassion, mercy, and basic human kindness wears many faces in our world today. When it parades itself as political power, it tears families apart, and we are dismayed. When it wears the masks of religious purity and the law, the exclusions that result become another truly destructive force within our families, within our communities, and within our world. I've spoken before of the transformative power of the Sycamore Project and my ministry within the Swaleside Maximum Security Prison. As the weekly prison visits progressed, there is a natural process whereby certain of the prisoners will seek out certain of the ministers with whom they feel comfortable. One particular man, I will call him Daniel, related his own story to me. As a young boy of about 6 years of age, Daniel had witnessed his father's murder while he lay hidden under the bed. His inability to save his father had led to feelings of shame, guilt, anger, and inadequacy. In order to overcome these feelings, the young boy began to pull insects such as moths and butterflies apart. This progressed naturally to catching mice and rats and setting them alight inside plastic bottles. With the progression of time, Daniel studied philosophy, psychology, and business management. Daniel was, to all intents and purposes, a success in the world. However, the need to have control never left him, and he continued to practice his little secret. As a successful businessman, he married and had a beautiful baby boy. In order to overcome his feelings of inadequacy, he had learnt the art of manipulation that gave him a feeling of security, a feeling of having taken charge. The inevitable moment, however, arrived, and Daniel attempted to murder both his young wife and his baby boy. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. This is where I met Daniel. Daniel and his wife were of Portuguese ancestry and were both staunch Catholics. Daniel had received the grace of mercy and forgiveness through the sacrament of reconciliation, and was welcomed back to participate fully in the Eucharist. Daniel's wife, and a victim, was however not so lucky. Seeking a new life for herself and her son, she divorced Daniel and remarried. She is now excluded from the sacrament of grace and the sacrament of the Eucharist. Her own belief in the sacramental nature of marriage, law, and church teachings has created for her an ongoing nightmare of exclusion and shame. I'd like to quote here, "A sacramental marriage is intentionally more than human covenant. It is also a religious covenant. But it's also more than law, it is also grace. From its beginning, God and Christ are present in it, gracing it, modeling and challenging its faithfulness. The presence of God, grace, in its most ancient Christian meaning, is not something extrinsic to Christian marriage, but something intrinsic to it, something without which it would not be a Christian marriage at all. The love of faithful spouses is indeed the very matrix of the sacrament of marriage, for it is in and through the spouse's love that God and Christ are prophetically made present. It is a matter for empirical verification, however, that not all Christian marriages become permanent. Some die, and when they die, it makes no sense to claim they are still binding ontologically, for the death of a marriage is as definitive as the death of a spouse. When the marriage dies, the Church traditionally deals with it in one of its many canonical processes. It claims that it is precluded from doing otherwise by fidelity to the words of Jesus. It is not convincing in the highest light of its own ancient tradition. And I would like to quote again. "Religious people are an unkind lot," said Father Faber. He meant that people who are eminent in their strict observance of religious duty are often strangely hard and unfeeling. The fact has been noted throughout all the ages. It was one of the aspects of the sin of Pharisaism. It has repeatedly recurred in the long history of the Church. The psychology is not difficult to understand. The temptation to unkindness belongs by nature to the militantly moral, and saints are only excluded from it by the great grace. Indeed, some eminent saints have not been as eminent in this fruit of the Spirit as others, and have worn their halo a little askew. It remains a tragic fact that multitudes of righteous people have not been kind. When one wonders why the gospel of Jesus Christ has not swept the world, one must look for the reason not only in the strength and obduracy of sin, but in the lack of kindness in many who have been prominent in church life. Few things commend any teaching more than kindness. It is my belief that our understanding of the intrinsic human dignity of the human person, our understanding of grace, the sacrament of marriage, the Pauline and Petrine privileges, and the Eucharist are intrinsically entwined and dependent on the practice of compassion, mercy, and basic human kindness. It is understood that theology develops as our understanding deepens, slowly. Yet today we cannot wait for the scholars to lead the way. We must begin again. Begin today. Each one of us must begin now to practice these values that are at the core of the teachings of Jesus. These are the very foundations of our humanity, and without it we indeed do face a new and terrifying dark age.